Hello, and welcome to Hazenraze on twitch.tv. Um, but if you were hoping to see some magic, we are taking a break from our normal programming to have a wonderful conversation with my dear friend Kevin, who has just published a new book. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Nate. Thanks for having me on.
Oh my god, it is my pleasure. Um, so let's talk about this book that you just released here, Legendary Puns. It's not your first publication, is that correct?
That's correct. I published a raunchy poem in college back in 2007, and then a fantasy novel a few years after that. The sequel to which is closely following this in the works,
Oh,
but
that's
still
great to hear. I've
in.
read the first one. I've actually read at least a draft of the second one, and I enjoyed both immensely. So I look forward to that coming
That's
out.
right. Well, I'm glad you liked it. This is nothing like any of that, though. This is quite the departure from my previous literary works.
That's true, although it is very much in line with how I have come to know you as a person because you are just endlessly quippy and puns just fall from your mouth. So this is only appropriate that your name is now attached to a publication of puns. Um, but you're not the only one on here. You've got a long list of credited authors. Do you want to tell me a little bit about who these people are and how this book came to be?
We don't need to talk about all of the people involved in the production of this book. You can see my name is at the top of the list. That's
Yeah, wow.
good
How
enough
did
for.
you get that billing?
It's actually alphabetical.
Oh.
At least that's my excuse. Um, well, what happened was I am known for my silver tongue and razor wit and being a funny guy generally. But I learned that as I did many things from my dad, Stephen Kelleher, who was the original witty, funny Kelleher, way before I was born. And he was known for his jokes, and him and his brothers and sisters and parents had a round robin letter. They still do, actually, which they exchange amongst each other, where they write a letter update about themselves and their families and what's going on. They put it in the envelope, they mail it on, and over the course of years, it circulates, and it just keeps circulating, so everyone's constantly more or less updated as to where everybody is. And my dad, being a kind of taciturn fellow, would have just like bullet lists of updates of what's going on, and then he would fill up his letter with some jokes that he would make up, and there'd be like two or three jokes at the end of the round robin that he would send. But he kept all of his letters in a filing cabinet, and he started this in, I think, the 80s, the early 80s. They started doing this, and he had, oh no, in the 70s I think it was, and he eventually had a huge drawer full of jokes, like a stand-up comedian would, just a ton of recorded jokes over history. And as being my father, he imparted his love of word humor to myself and to my four brothers. There's five of us total. And me and at least one other brother started keeping track of our own jokes, and we both started publishing them on Twitter and Facebook, sharing them one at a time, like joke of the day or joke of the week type of thing, or whenever they came up. And we ended up with a huge list of puns too. And then this reputation was growing that the Kellehers had all these puns and jokes. In fact, I kept running into it when I would post on Facebook anything else, like a regular Facebook post. I'd get comments like, I was reading this waiting for the punchline, and it turns out you were just posting a regular post and not a joke. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes I post regular things too.
Yeah, that
But it got.
speaks to how often, yeah, you're just weaving these things into the way you talk and interact with us all, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. I know I make it look easy, but
You
like
really
winning the
do.
world's largest do contest, it's no small feat.
Oh, wow. I think that one's in there.
That's what I'm saying. That's the one.
Well,
Um,
I can attest to the taciturnness of your father. I have met him, and it would surprise anyone, I think, to meet him and then learn, well, maybe not getting to hear him speak, but at least from first appearances, he seems a very humorless fellow. So it is very cool to know that beneath that surface lies a very beautiful mind, a humorous mind. And well, so how many of these puns here in the book are credited to your father?
Oh, well, I didn't keep total track of whose puns were whose, although I could go through and find that out. But numerically, he's probably in third place, second or third place. He might be tied with me for like the number of puns, because the problem was my brother Luke went absolutely insane. He actually started Legendary Puns, the Twitter channel, or the
Yes.
as a Twitter account, where he posted a pun every day for like a year and a half. And so when I finally got the gumption to put all our jokes together into one book, he had like 450 individual puns to sift through, which was just way more than any of the other authors did. But he ended up also having the most jokes cut from the final book, but only by virtue of having so many puns to begin with. But if you look at the puns in the book, when you find the lengthier, wordier puns, those are probably my dad's puns. So the puns he does have usually have a longer setup, a more intricate setup, and then some sort of ridiculous punchline at the end to tie it all together.
Well, that's cool to hear because, yeah, I definitely noticed, of the different varieties of puns in the book. There are some that read a little more like a story, and I really enjoyed those. I enjoyed all of them, but those ones, they kind of take you... Yeah, you're right. Not all of them, but I do like the story ones. They kind of take you on a little journey. It's almost like, like those 2-sentence fictions or something. And yeah, not just a story, but I found myself learning things as well. Clearly, you guys know a lot about a lot of things. Math, science, different languages, it's all in there. History.
Yeah, we're pretty smart, and my vocabulary is very big, you might say. No, it's true. And with the four of us, and there's actually more contributing punsmiths that are listed inside the cover. There's a little list of people there.
Oh yeah, look at that. I did miss that.
And in those cases, a lot of these jokes were published on Facebook at some point, and under the jokes would be further jokes that people would make off of the first joke. So like this blurb on the back, that's just a really, really long list of puns about bread and baking woven into the back blurb. That's a combination of lots of different jokes going back and forth, where someone would post one, or a lot of these are from an email thread actually between me and my brothers, where someone would leave a few jokes in the thread, and then the response would add a few more, and then another response would add a few more, and they'd build up. So I kind of homogenized them all for that. But in the case of those contributing punsmiths, at some point online or in an email, they refined or added a joke here or there. So I felt like they deserve some credit, because some of their work, some of their mental punistry went into what I was using to put the book together in the end. So I wanted to give them a little credit for that contribution.
Well, that's good of you.
But as for the four main workhorses there, me, my dad, my brothers, Luke, and Mike, we do have varied interests. My dad's a musician. Mike is an engineer. Luke has traveled the world. All of us but my dad speak at least one other language. So we have all these varied inputs that we drew on over the years to make some pretty wild puns in the end, particularly the bilingual ones that you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, and all of that definitely comes through. You are not the only published brother previous to this book. Is that correct?
That's correct. Lucas Kelleher, my brother and one of the authors on here, also has published Shakotan Blue, also available on Amazon. When he lived in Japan for 2 years in a fishing village in Hokkaido, that was so remote, he was the first non-Japanese person to ever set foot in it. And he lived there for 2 years. He wrote a memoir about what that was like and what he did, and what was going on there. That's pretty fascinating.
Wow. Well, I hope he was able to convey some of his humor in Japanese to them as well, because puns don't work as well, I guess, if you're not speaking the native language. Speaking of your brother Luke, well, or maybe of Japan in general, I'm going to read one of the puns that I've picked out here. This one is titled "Personal Style," and it goes, "I would wear a straitjacket, but I'm not sure I can pull it off." And I love that one because it combines my interest in fashion and psychotherapy. But what I also wanted to point out here was that it's one of the many that are illustrated. You can see this guy here, who I think is kind of sporting a rather Japanese hairstyle, and his buddy in the back wearing the straitjacket. Tell me about these illustrations. Which of the brothers here contributed to that? Or
So yeah, my brother. Well, I'll take you back to the origins. My brother Mike is a very good doodler, illustrator. Was always drawing in class and school instead of paying attention, and at an early age got into anime. And he actually introduced the rest of us when he was in college, discovering Studio Ghibli films and Akira and stuff like that. He'd bring those back and introduce them to us, who were from a small town in Iowa and had very little access to worldly things such as this, at least at that time. And he got Luke into it, and Luke got hard into illustrating and drawing and doodling, and he introduced me to Marvel Comics and the X-Men, and he was a big comic book nerd. And you can definitely see it in Luke's style, that it's very much from an anime kind of foundation. And then he's sort of, over the years, although these drawings here, they look a lot to me like what he was drawing when he was in high school and middle school. He's kind of had a personal style that he's worked on, basically developed himself, but it's very anime centered, and it had a kind of cartoon quality to it. So when I was putting this book together, I was like, this is a book of poetry essentially, but it's just a lot of words on pages, and they're short and pithy and cute. To tie this back to my dad again, he used to read the Far Side comics.
mm-hmm.
If you're familiar with those, which usually have a pithy little joke and then a goofy little illustration to go with it. And so we were all familiar with that, and I thought that sort of style really lends itself to at least some of these puns. Due to the nature of puns, some of them, there's no sensical thing you could draw for them, but a few of them, it actually helps the joke along, or it adds a little something, or it makes it distinguished, or drives the point home in some cases. So I was like, hey Luke, here's a list of the puns on here that I think might do well by adding drawings to them. Would you like to do some illustrations? And he agreed, and very dutifully and steadily hammered out these drawings. There's like, I think 38 or so. There's slightly less than 40 total illustrations.
Breeze through. Yeah, you'll see they do come up quite a bit. I mean, I absolutely love all of the illustrations. I think you were right to include them, and your brother did a great job. So they were all Luke's drawings? They're all Luke?
Yeah, all the illustrations are Luke.
And they're all fresh for this book?
Yes and no, with the exception at the very end, in the about the authors section.
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
So those illustrations of myself, of Luke, and of Mike are actually from illustrations he did a while ago. He maintains a website called KelleherBrothers.com, and he likes to encourage all of the brothers to contribute material. He mostly reviews video games, and he writes about. He has basically a blog about video games and games in general, and sometimes popular culture. And he's very regular posting about all that. But on occasion, I'll have an idea about a video game that I played, or about Magic the Gathering, the greatest strategy game of all time. And I'll have feelings on that, and I'll write a blog post and submit it to him. And then he's published some of my articles, you could say, or blogs on KelleherBrothers.com. And so that already had a sort of about the Kelleher Brothers section of the website, and for that he had drawn these cool portraits of all the brothers in some sort of martial arts arena. Like I studied the art of the blade in historical European martial arts, so he gave me a European longsword in my illustration, and all of my brothers have done some kind of martial art at some point in their lives, basically. So he more or less embellished the drawings to make them kind of fun with this martial art aspect. So we just pulled those from what he had done earlier. He had not, however, done a portrait of my dad in this style.
Oh yeah.
So when we were putting them together, we didn't have one for my dad, which I thought at first was kind of appropriate because he's not the kind of guy who likes to have his picture taken. But Luke was like, "Oh, I need to do an illustration of him." So he did one of him based off of an actual photograph of him in Renaissance attire playing the lute, which is something my dad actually does, and made a matching component. So the 3 pictures were done already, but then he did add the picture of my dad.
Can we show these? Should we show these? Okay, great. I mean, I think they are. Yeah,
I think the audience
they're
deserves
beautiful.
to know.
I mean, everyone watching will have a copy of this soon enough, I'm sure. But yeah, I really like these drawings as well. Yeah, what a great way to capture each of the authors here in their avatar forms, maybe.
Yeah, our matrix.
Well.
And while you're at it, the Legendary Puns is for sale now on Amazon exclusively in ebook and paperback.
Oh,
that's where you can find.
You can get an ebook as well. I didn't realize that. So many
Yes,
options. You can. Well, speaking of Magic the Gathering, here's a pun that I picked out called "Can I Pick Your Brain?" Bought a pithing needle last week. I'm bored with it now. I'll be honest, I didn't actually get that one at first, and I know the Magic card pithing needle, but it took me a second. But is that, my question there, is that from the Magic card pithing needle? Because I've never heard of a pithing needle in any other context.
Well, Magic is a great avenue to learn new and obscure words, but pithing needle is a real tool from world history that does bore into someone's brain.
And removes their activated abilities.
Through the eye, yeah. It's kind of like similar to a lobotomy, but I think it was an ancient practice, as far as I know. I'm not even sure that I made that joke up. That might have been one of my brothers, not all of whom play Magic, so they might have known from the thing. Although it could have been me who did know of it first through Magic too. I can't say for sure on that one. As
someone with a lot of brothers myself, I know how our brains can kind of blend together throughout time.
Into the hive mind.
Yes, exactly. Another thing I wanted to ask about and point out was how each of these puns have an associated little title here with them. So, each poem has its title. Were those all created by the person who wrote the pun? Did you add those all in? Because a lot of them are quite humorous themselves, sort of an additional little joke on the joke.
That's a good point. That's all the credit is due to my brother Luke on that one.
Wow.
When he was posting on Legendary Puns, the Twitter feed, he gave all of his puns a title. And I hadn't done that, and I don't think Mike or my dad had done that either. But it ended up being a good idea because it helped keep them organized in your head a little bit better, and it did add a little extra something. In a couple cases, I think it actually even modifies the joke based on what the title actually says. Like, I can't remember specifically what does that, but I do think that happened a couple times. But they didn't all have puns, or didn't all have titles. So as I was putting the book together, I made up the rest of the titles that didn't already have them, and or Luke or Mike or my dad would help me with that on occasion. But they're predominantly all Luke's, and then some of them I made up to go with it.
Wow. Well, it was a great addition. I mean, the whole book is really well formatted. Do you have yourself any personal favorites in the book that you wanted to read?
No, I hate these jokes.
You've spent your whole life hearing them and repeating them. I'm sure.
I did just want to point out, since you mentioned it, the layout and design was by my lovely wife, Laura McBride,
Oh
who does
yeah.
all things graphical and digital, and she put the book together in that physical sense. So the handsomeness of the layout is all due to her.
Wow. Well, yes. Good job, Laura, because it does. It's yeah. The formatting is beautiful. It really. I mean, and the way the illustrations are perfectly spaced out throughout the book, and yeah, it's all very well done. Um,
To answer your other question, though, I do have some favorites. I've read these jokes hundreds of times, rewritten them in some cases dozens of times, and when I flip through it, some of them still make me laugh to this day. Um, oh, let's see here.
yeah, give us one. Even if I don't laugh, I'm sure the audience will be.
Be laughing at home. Did you hear about the tin factory employees caught having sex with foodstuffs? Authorities say they're doing everything they can.
I love that one too. I when I read it, it did make me laugh, although I had to read it a few times because they're a little complicated. You have to be really with it, to
Some
get all the
some of them you
nuances.
do. Some of them, I mean, we have a variety. Some of them you don't. Like one of my other favorites is only 3 words long, and that's castration takes balls.
Wow, you're right. That is only 3 words. Yeah, that's a great one as well. Um, I'm gonna read another one because you made me think of this other one that um, I really enjoyed here. A little bit of a longer one. This one's called Flying High. Smugglers accidentally left a bale of marijuana on the beach by the Texas Gulf. The local birds swarmed the bale and devoured it, leaving no tern unstoned. I mean, has me rolling.
Yeah, that's pretty good too.
Well, okay, so well, so how many? You said this before. Maybe your brother had to cut a lot of his own, but how many puns passed between you guys would you say did not make it into this book, or are they still just being created anew every time you talk?
We do, yeah, we do still form them. As you mentioned, we kind of do it automatically without thinking sometimes, but they don't always get written down because that's kind of what made the difference. Usually puns come up in conversation. In fact, that's what my brother Mike prefers the best are those natural puns that just slip into an actual interaction with a human and they're just perfect for that moment.
Yeah.
And
Oh, and I've witnessed many of those in your presence. I have to believe. I think it's more than just uh, the raising by your father. I think there's a genetic component here because I don't know anyone else that can write these so quickly in their brain as you do. So and if your brothers are doing the same, I think there might be a gene in there that contributes to it.
um, that could be. We were all raised in a government research laboratory, so that might have had something to do with it. Now that you mention it,
You and the rest of the Iowans.
but no, there's 365 puns in here, and there's a couple hundred, maybe 250 thereabouts that didn't make the cut um, for one reason or another. They weren't all necessarily just deplorable, but as you can see in the book, sometimes people like the bad jokes, the ones that make you groan, that just feel awful in a good way somehow. That's why it's called a collection of puns, dad jokes, bad jokes, and wordplay. Because some people have different opinions about these jokes, and especially dads, they like to make everyone suffer with their dad jokes. So there's a few of those in there that are intentionally supposed to make you groan.
And they will. Yeah, tell me a little
Yeah.
more too about the uh, outlay of the book. I mean, yeah, so this is a great subtitle here that gives you kind of a taste of the different flavors you're going to get. But you have the book actually broken into 4 sections,
That's
correct?
right. There are pun. It starts with punfection, which are are most perfect puns. They are because a pun is confusing two words or two meanings, things that sound alike or seem similar, and if it is at the highest level of complexity, when you hear it, it can be the same one way, or it can be interpreted in two ways. Like, for example, if you think you can lower the ratio of certain particles within your body, then you're only diluting yourself. So, on one hand, you could be diluting yourself because that's what it's literally described, or you could be diluting yourself, confused about what you're capable of doing. And if it's a punfectional pun, you don't have enough evidence to prove one way or the other. It's perfectly divided with the evidence you have in the pun. It could go either way. So it's very ironic and confusing. The next chapter was come up puns, and those are just your kind of more average type of pun. It's not necessarily perfectly balanced in that way, but it is just funny or satisfying or humorous. Kind of like everyone likes lending money to me because my debts are outstanding. Something like that.
I like that one, yeah.
And then the punishment chapter is number 3, and those are the ones that are more the bad jokes, dad jokes, and groaners. Birth control is forbidden at the Renaissance Fair to keep things authentic for the period.
Ooh, yeah, that one stuck out to me. It's definitely a dad joke. Might be bad in the wrong audience.
Could be called a bad joke by some.
But I did
it's really
like it.
in the eye of the beholder. And then the final chapter or segment is called Pun Runs, and that's where we just smash a bunch of puns together into one kind of larger omni-pun. One of my favorites is that sweeping changes will be coming to our janitorial policy after a writing floor scrubber was stolen. Whoever did it made a clean getaway.
Oh. Yeah, I feel like you really end the book with a bang because those ones tend to be a little longer, but yeah, as you said, they are full of this wordplay. Really impressive.
And those ones almost exclusively are combinations of from all the authors.
Oh.
Not one of us just landed with one of those, but like I combined puns. In looking through the submitted puns, there were certain categories of which there were lots of examples. For example, cabinetry. For whatever reason, the components of cabinetry, the woods and the stones, there's like a lot of puns to be made about them. So there were a lot of cabinetry related ones, and those would either get homogenized into singular puns, or in some cases they'd fleshed out in a pun run where I put all of the good stuff together into one longer pun stream of related puns. But that last segment is pretty much all a combined group effort of punistry.
Well, and that's perfect because it's a encapsulation of how this whole book is a collaborative effort between you and your brothers and your father, and what a wonderful way to make something with your family and do what you do best.
Yeah, it is kind of a special thing because it's very us, very us. And it's in a way, it's all my dad's fault for being who he is and raising his kids the way that he did, for better or for worse. And, Father's Day is right around the corner.
This it is.
And this makes an excellent Father's Day gift for anyone, whether they be a father or not. Be a great gift for them.
Well,
and the greatest I could give my dad is a big fat royalty check. He would really love it.
I'm sure the creation of this is more than enough for him. It's got to be such a gift for him to see all of his sons still, doing great things like this, and that are an honor to him and his skills as well. I'm gonna read one more here, and this comes from the last section. So it's a pun run, but it's a shorter one. It's called "No Skin Off My Back," and it says, strip away the hairy grand opening, and the waxing salon was a rip-roaring success. As I hope this book will be for you and your brothers. So yeah, Father's Day coming up. Everybody should go and grab one of these, paperback or ebook, both available on Amazon. And yeah, Kevin, give me one more pun.
This one is another little pun run. If you had to carry your standard transmission around in a stylish tiny bag, you'd have to clutch a clutch, clutch, clutch.
Wow, that's going to take me a while to unpack, but...
you might need to write it down, yeah. Unpack. Good one.
Hey, see, I actually didn't even do that intentionally, but I'm glad it got in there. This has been so fun. Thanks for coming on the channel. And yeah, everybody at home, get yourself a book of legendary puns today.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
My pleasure, Kevin. We'll see you soon.